some of those principles is first thing I was thinking of is like transparency. The reason why, you and I don't know what's in the supply chains and everything is because, we have this large business and industry edifice like that's completely supplanted on because of this, economic structure that, you and I didn't vote for, we didn't put together for, whatever. But then now you're really seeing, which gives me hope, in a lot of different ways is these things springing up out of the woodwork in between these. And so I guess now let's talk about, even though you might be within a system and within, the confines of things, variables need to be changed, et cetera. What are some of the principles of, I guess, the continuation? I mean, we'll get into doomer optimism in a little bit. So maybe let's just talk about optimism in general. Like how do you even go about doing that? Is it more of or you personally, do you go about solving problems in more of a, let's look at it from 5,000 feet up and really, tone in on exactly all the different intricacies? Or do you feel it out? Like what is the most pressing thing at this moment? Or even more the most impactful? What is the most newsworthy, et cetera? So how do you go about like looking at these different issues, seeing it, and then also, having an optimism? And we'll get into doomer optimism specifically later, but like in general.
Yeah. So basically, I had this aha moment in college where I took this class called Is Development Sustainable? It's, answering the question throughout the class. Development meaning economic development, like building things. And there's always these words, sustainable development, and the question of the class was, is development sustainable? Like, should we even be saying those two words together? And in that class, like my environmental consciousness just totally exploded. I had no idea about all these environmental problems. And so one aha moment I had in that class was basically, this is the problem. This is the problem set of problems to be solved throughout the rest of our lifetimes. And it's not just environment, like the environment is connected to like the economic, the social, the political, the financial, all this stuff. So like I just think environment is one strong way in which people are connected to seeing a problem, to recognizing it, like they care about the earth, they care about life on earth. So it's one way to recognize that there is a problem. But I think it's just the whole environmental movement or set of problems it's just the symptoms of the larger problem. You know what I mean? It's all systemic. It's all systemic. So I had this aha moment that was basically like, we all have a role to play in this. Like, if we're to solve this problem, it's going to be like all of us doing a bunch of tiny things until we all work together enough to figure out the solution. And I was like, oh, there's so much potential here. Like, this is crazy. I can't believe how much potential there is to solve this stuff. And like, at the time I was thinking like, we just need jobs and like this and solar panels, and there's so many jobs out there and stuff like that. And I was just thinking along those lines. Now, the way I think about it is more or less like historical materialism is a way of thinking that it's not totally deterministic, but it's basically like, we know that history goes, you have certain lessons from history, sort of things happen, you can learn from the past. And one historical materialist take that really helps me to wrap my mind around how social change happens is called dual process theory by this professor who now lives in Mexico named Morris Berman. And the dual process theory is basically like societies fail. And when they fail, other societies grow. So he was talking about like the end of the Roman Empire. And as that failed and faltered, there were all sorts of moments where you could say like, oh, it's truly failed now, crossed the Rubicon, but really that was not the total end. And then in the midst of that failure, there were all these sort of like mystery cults starting up, and they were all similar to Christianity in structure and form. And then, sort of Christianity took a hold. It had enough adherents that it then became the next world order. And then, sort of like changed from the Roman Empire to the Holy Roman Empire, and it became Christianity was the next world order in Europe at that time. So I just think we're probably in a period now of decline of one world system. Again, like the scale is just so wildly out of proportion to any past empires, but it's still the same kind of like dominant world system that's failing. And when a system fails, a lot of the things people rely on, even for basic things like food or sanitation, transport, that kind of stuff, it fails with the failing society. Like this, the society fails to provide what it once was able to provide. And then when that happens, people have to seek out some alternative means of doing things, accessing food or making buildings that don't crumble, whatever. Right. And so basically, people are forced to invent alternatives. Right. And that's what I'm interested in. Right. And it's not really that much of a conscious process. A lot of the times people come to food production, for example, because they're like, either there was times where I couldn't access food on the shelves, where there was some kind of disaster, and that really freaked me out. I don't know the quality of the food on the shelves. I don't trust these things. There's no good food in my neighborhood, for example. And it's just, to me, that's just a whole host of failures of the system. And so then these people like go and seek out some other way to access food because the system is not providing it in the way that they would like. And so for me, I think it's what's really positive about that is that anything that sort of upsets you about the way the world is, and anything you're pulled towards to create that is solves your actual problems, but you also love and care about, like, go do it. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like having chickens and planting fruit trees and getting cattle for the first time. Like, to me, I'm really interested in how all those systems work. So I want to try it. And it simultaneously solves the problem. Like, if we don't have access to global food for some reason, I'll have this food. And so, I think, like, if I start to think about solutions, I think of them as multi-pronged. It's not just like some person purposefully saying, let me change the world, and they do something that's like maybe esoteric or like specific to them, but instead it's some person who's like actually trying to solve a problem of their life, right, in a way that they're interested in. And I think, like, we need new education systems, transport systems, ways of building, ways of making urban environments, for example, like urban planning, food, agriculture, like all this stuff. We need new ways of eating, like even restaurants, new kinds of community structure, all this stuff. Anything that interests you, like we basically need like soldiers in this fight. And the way that I think about it too, though, is like, there's also like this weird period if this is like the graph and one society is going down and another one simultaneously going up, there's a cross point where it's kind of awkward and you're not in either. And so, like, if I'm somebody who thinks that one is going down, another one's coming up, it's hard to convince these people like it's happening, you know what I mean? So then I'm just like, just try anything, because once we get to this really low point, it's going to suck. Like, it's going to be horrible. A lot of people are going to struggle because they're, and we don't know how to live without this, we haven't yet built this yet. And so we need like that, a lot of people working in this. So my whole effort is just trying to get more people, like a little further along on this curve before they're forced to, and then we have to go into the next one. So
that's beautifully said. Yeah, no, that's beautifully said, because we're trying to almost do that with like stories and myths and like how, people that are just going about their daily lives and, their blue collar work and stuff, but then just doing a little bit every day. If we could provide an interview or an essay to make them trip over their own truths and, all these kind of things, like, then that's a job well done in our book.